The irresponsible use of resources causes environmental degradation. Now, for those of you who don't like the look of such equations, don't worry, I'm not taking you back to your dreaded math lessons. But it's important to understand that this equation over here has no neutral ground. It's not a clear-cut moral issue with a simple or straightforward answer. Saving the planet is in a different league altogether. It's between you, me, the 7 billion people breathing the same air, drinking from the same water systems, and looking to the same sun for energy. Now, I started out pretty young. I was 10 years old when I started speaking about global issues such as poverty, hunger, malnutrition, global warming, climate change, pollution. And the more I researched about these topics, the more perplexed I became. I couldn't understand why, knowing all that we did, there was no urgency to act. So today, I speak to you as none other than a young person who can't seem to understand why our elders are procrastinating when it comes to the future of our planet, our future. So in the next 15 minutes, I hope I shall be able to nudge you to take notice of our planet, which is on life support today. If I can do that, I would have truly done justice to the scores of species dying out and the innumerable hectares of forest being destroyed, even as I speak right now. To start with, let me give you a hypothetical situation. Suppose you all go to your favorite restaurant and order your favorite ice cream flavor, say chocolate. Now, there's no problem with that. I mean, what's wrong with going to a restaurant and ordering chocolate ice cream, is there? But imagine if everyone going to that restaurant started ordering chocolate ice cream. What would happen? Firstly, the kitchen would run out of chocolate ice cream, of course. The waiter would apologize to you profusely, and you might even scream out your lungs at the restaurant manager. But in the end, you'll go try your luck at another restaurant for that chocolate ice cream. But on the planet, it doesn't happen that way. So if we finish up all our crude oil reserves, if we hack down all our trees, we have nowhere else to go. And that's the bottom line. It's as simple as that. Now, when I talk of climate change, I'm not setting out to prove or reprove the science. Plenty of volumes have been written on it that do so admirably. And I don't pretend to know more about climate science and its correlation with climate change better than scientific research institutions at least, but I can tell you for sure that it's high time we understood that climate change can no longer be ignored, that environmental degradation is a serious threat, and it's no longer a burden that we can pass on to the next generation. Now, some of the questions that we should be asking ourselves today are, should I take that plastic bag offered to me by the shopkeeper? Should I install energy-efficient appliances at home? Should I leave the tap running? Should I walk to the nearby market even if I'm really tempted to drive? Climate change? Nah, boring. Sustainability? Not my cup of tea. But more importantly, how will these small acts of mine make the planet notice? How do I get that critical mass that will make a difference? These are some of the questions that I hope to address in the next few minutes. Now, the recently released IPCC report talked of certain key risks, which I think are worth noting. Some of them included infrastructure failures due to extreme weather conditions, farmers going broke due to lack of water, land and marine ecosystems failing, and increase in intergroup violence and conflict due to economic and political shocks. Now, I'm not making any blanket claim about these consequences. All that I'm saying is that climate change is threatening our land, water, food, and health security. Now, all through my interactions with world leaders, with eminent scientists, with environmentalists far more experienced than me, through the various summits, conferences, and events that I attended, I learned a few lessons. And I think they're worth recounting to you all today. Lesson 1. It's not if, but when. So we may not have a formula over here right now to say that because this, therefore climate change, like one of the gentlemen came up to me recently saying, climate change, I have my doubts about that. It's an agenda actually, you know. But I can say that we may not have a clear-cut formula yet, but we've clearly moved from that stage where we are establishing the motion to the real debate. We wait for species to make it to the endangered list, and then we spend millions trying to get them off that list. In other words, too much, but much too late. Sadly, that's also the case with climate policy and negotiations. We're clearly heading that way where we wait and wait until the planet is in such dire circumstances that we pull on all plows to avert it, harming ourselves more in the process. Every year, world leaders meet in Doha, Copenhagen, Bali, Qatar. But it makes me wonder whether in the end, is it all rhetoric? You have the developed nations saying, okay, we're going to reduce our emissions, but you first. And then the developing nations say, no, you first. So that's all there is to it. I hope, and I sincerely hope so actually, that with the UN climate talks coming up in Poland next week, we will be able to rise above our petty squabbles. Because as someone has rightly said, delay is the deadliest form of denial, especially when it comes to climate change. Now let's jump straight to the second lesson. The planet doesn't discriminate. So if you're an American or German or Russian or Japanese, Chinese, Indian, French, it doesn't matter to the planet because we are all staring at that same future. It's like a race against time. We may have different starting points as a result of economic inequalities, but we are definitely going to stop at the same finishing point. And that's the bottom line. Climate change is over and above religion, nationality, and race. So the Inuit of North America will see it in disappearing ice, starving polar bears, and wayward whale migrations. The Europeans will see it in vanishing alpine glaciers and Mediterranean droughts. And the Asians will see it in lethal hurricanes and floods. So a normal person would say to this, it doesn't matter. If we run short of resources in the short run, it'll pay for someone to come up and develop a substitute. So if we're running out of logs, we have someone coming up and inventing plywood. The problem of refugees, we have smarter urban planning. Polluted air, better gas filter masks. So you see what we're doing over here? We're creating problems, environmental problems which are serious, and then we're creating an army of prototype solutions to tackle them. But I ask, till when? Why not stop creating the problems in the first place? Last year, I had the opportunity to meet Sir Robert Swan, who is the first man to have walked both to the North and the South Pole. And he came to my school last year and he paraphrased it perfectly when he said, you know what, Riddhima? The greatest threat to our planet today is the belief that someone else is going to save it. Now coming to the third lesson, global problem, local solution. So in 2010, I was visiting Rajasthan, the interiors of Rajasthan, where I happened to meet the members of the Bishnoi community. For those of you who don't know about them, they're arguably the world's oldest environmentalists. Observing their lifestyles was a parable in itself. Made me realize that less is in fact more for them. As a matter of fact, the Bishnois are the only community, Hindu community, who bury their dead to save precious wood used for the funeral pyre. Or one of the communities who consider it their duty to protect the local flora and fauna, nurturing the young of the animals as they would nurture their own. Similarly, India's answer to the 3 R's, reduce, reuse, and recycle, lies in the concept of jugaad. How many of us have heard of jugaad, by the way, over here? It's something essentially Indian, isn't it? And what's special about it is that jugaad is about doing more with less. It's about spotting opportunities in the most adverse of circumstances and making resourceful and improvising solutions out of them using simple means. Now you might think, here I am, talking about an issue as international and global as climate change and environmental degradation, and then there's this complete disconnection with the Bishnoi community and jugaad. But I mention this because I feel that sweeping international treaties or climate talks which happen every year are not the only answer to our path towards sustainable development. While they have an impact, it's also important to build on partnerships between governments, NGOs, and communities. Last year, we had the Rio 20 Plus conference. I'm sure you must have heard of it. The conference was held after the 1992 Earth Summit, which happened back in Rio de Janeiro. The conference last year managed to garner 1,400 pledges valued at around 1% of the global GDP. But the challenge still remains. How do we translate our commitments from that rectangular piece of paper into action? Agreeing on something in Rio doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to happen on ground. We have to focus on localized responses. Coming to my last and final lesson. Lesson 4. Sustainable business is not an oxymoron. This is for all those corporations who think that their initiatives towards sustainability end once they file their corporate social responsibility reports. This is for all those businesses and companies who feel that we can't afford to reduce greenhouse gas emissions because we have to cut forests, we have to drag heavy weights across the ocean floor to remain globally competitive. But what they don't realize is that in doing that, They're essentially elevating the economy above the ecology, and that is fundamentally flawed because the very factors which enable our businesses to flourish, to survive, are in fact the oceans, the atmosphere, the wetlands, the forest, which are constantly cleansing and replenishing themselves. So businesses today operate under this totally unsustainable notion that endless growth is possible, and that therefore endless growth means success. So the question that we are asking today is whether more is success, whereas the question we should be asking is what as a minimum constitutes enough. Why do we have to look at it that way? Why can't we look at it as reducing waste means financial saving? So when you look at a business through the lens of sustainability, you actually see a whole host of financial and environmental efficiencies come into the picture. You see sustainability as a new force that drives innovation, a new way of looking at the same products to enhance brand value. Now, these were some of the lessons that I learned as a young environmentalist, and they sum up the work that I've been doing since I started as a child. Now, it's important to realize that it is possible in all probability that in the next 50 years, carbon pollution, overfishing, deforestation, and other such exploitative behaviors that are bringing the planet to a brink will go the way of trafficking and slavery, what I call environmental crime. But what we don't realize is that as the top predator on the food chain, we are the ones who will be most affected, the most vulnerable to the consequences. Now, I have a small exercise for all of you. I came across this term and I found it rather interesting because I couldn't pronounce it first of all, and I couldn't understand the meaning, which is very obvious because it was in a different language. But I want you to tell me, how many of you know the meaning of this? No one, right? So if you don't know the meaning of something, what would you do? You'd consult the dictionary, you'd go to your friends, ask your teachers for help. But what I want to know is, how many of you would Google this right now if you had the option? How many of you would use Google right now?
Google Translate.
Okay, that's 50% of the audience. I should then tell you that one Google search of yours is equivalent to lighting a 60-watt light bulb for 17 seconds. No, nothing. That's inconsequential. I mean, how can lighting a light bulb for 17 seconds kill the planet? But multiply that by the number of days in a year and multiply that by the number of people on this planet, and we have a potential recipe for environmental degradation. Buckminster Fuller once said that the spaceship Earth is so ingeniously designed that no one has a clue that we are flying through the universe at 1,000,000 miles per hour with no need for a seatbelt, plenty of room, and really good food. That's the beauty of our planet. Now, I think it's also important to tell you that after all the pessimism, or often as I call it, negative optimism that I seem to have instilled in you all, I have to say this. I do what I do every day because I still have hope, and I will continue to have it. Why? Because it's inbuilt in us. Let me give you a small picture. The total cellular activity in the human body amounts to 1 septillion in one moment. That's actually 1 with the 24 zeros after it. So the number of processes that our body undergoes in 1 millisecond is more than 10 times the number of stars in this universe. That's the dynamism happening within us. So what do you think that makes us? That makes us little universes in our own rights. That makes us change agents whose force, whose potential, if harmonized and collectivized, can cause a paradigm shift. And it's this dynamism that I talk about when I say that I have hope with all of us. The hope lies within us. It lies with the connection that we have with nature. The connection, that link, that relationship, that cord that has been waiting to be unraveled between man and nature is still intact. No matter how hard we may try, we cannot break it. We may have forgotten it, but we haven't lost it. So in the end, I'll actually go back to where I started from, which is that responsibility plus resources make a healthy planet and happy people. So if you responsibly use your resources, we have a beautiful planet to look forward to, and I don't think we want to lose that. So my message to you all in the end would be that the cost of something is what you give up to get it, but the planet is not something to be given up for anything. Thank you.